Welcome to Life Stories, where we delve into the complexities of love, betrayal, and the powerful lessons life has to offer. Today's story is about Nathan, a man caught between his perfect marriage and a dangerous temptation. As he battles guilt, desire, and manipulation, his world unravels in ways he never imagined. Join us as we explore how one mistake can change everything, and the price we sometimes pay for our choices. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to begin today's story and stay tuned for more compelling tales of life's most profound moments. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon when Emily found herself sitting in her cozy living room, basking in the warmth of the sunlight streaming through the windows. It had been a month since her wedding to Nathan, a man she called her soulmate. Her heart swelled with contentment every time she thought about their marriage. Nathan treated her like a queen, loving her endlessly, showering her with thoughtful gifts, and always making her feel like she was the center of his world. The joy she felt was unmatched, and Emily couldn't help but smile every time Nathan walked into the room. He was everything she had prayed for and more. In the days that had followed their wedding, Emily found herself in a perfect little bubble. She had everything she had ever wanted: love, affection, stability, and companionship. She was living the dream. Or so she thought. It was a rare moment when her best friend from college, Charlotte, came to visit. Charlotte and Emily had been inseparable during their university years. They had shared everything: laughs, tears, and experiences. But as time went on, their lives had taken very different paths. Charlotte had remained single, living a life of independence, while Emily had settled into her married life, surrounded by love and happiness. The moment Charlotte arrived at Emily's house, Emily could see the familiar warmth in her eyes. But there was something else too, something she couldn't quite place. Perhaps it was the faint hint of longing. The way Charlotte's eyes seemed to linger just a bit too long on Emily's smile. Her laughter, her newfound bliss. It was subtle, but it didn't escape Emily's notice. They embraced warmly, and Emily invited her friend to sit down in the living room where they had spent many nights talking about life, love, and their dreams for the future. As they settled into their conversation, Emily couldn't help but share her joy. She was bursting with happiness, and she needed to tell Charlotte all about how perfect her life had become. "You can't imagine how happy I am, Charlotte," Emily said, her voice full of affection. "Nathan is everything I prayed for. He pampers me, he spoils me, and he treats me like I'm the only woman in the world. I can't even begin to describe how incredible he is, especially in bed," Emily added with a playful laugh. Charlotte smiled at her, but her smile was different. It wasn't the kind of smile a best friend would wear when they were genuinely happy for someone. No, it was laced with something deeper, something harder to understand. Behind that smile, Emily saw a flash of envy, a flicker of longing that was hard to ignore. "You're always so lucky, Emily," Charlotte said, her voice soft but edged with something that Emily couldn't quite place. "Even in school, everything seemed to come so easily for you. You were always the one who had it all: guys, friends, opportunities. Honestly, I envy you sometimes. I wish I could have what you have." Emily laughed, unaware of the depth of Charlotte's words. "Don't worry, Charlotte," she said, leaning forward with a reassuring smile. "Your time will come. God has a plan for everyone. You just have to wait for it." But as Charlotte nodded, Emily couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was amiss. Her friend was saying the right things, but the way she said them didn't sit right. It was almost as if there was a hidden undertone to her words. Something unspoken but powerful. As the afternoon turned into evening, Charlotte announced that it was time for her to leave. "It's getting late," she said with a sigh. "I should be heading home now." Emily frowned slightly, reluctant to see her friend go. "Why don't you stay the night?" she suggested, her voice full of warmth. "We can talk more and catch up. It's been so long since we spent time together." Charlotte shook her head, a small smile on her lips. "No, I should get home tonight. But thank you for the offer." Emily hesitated. Then, with a soft sigh, she added, "All right, let Nathan drive you home. It's already dark." And it's not safe for you to be out there alone. Nathan, who had just returned from running errands, was visibly tired. He looked at Emily with a faint frown. I'm really exhausted. Emily, can't she just take a taxi? But Emily insisted. It won't take long, I promise. Just drop her off and come right back. You know how dangerous it is at night. Please. Reluctantly, Nathan agreed. He grabbed his keys and headed to the car, with Charlotte following behind him. The drive started off quietly, with the occasional small talk. But as the car wound through the quiet streets, Charlotte couldn't help but steal glances at Nathan. Nathan was tall, handsome, with a quiet confidence that was hard to resist. There was something about him, something that made Charlotte wonder how Emily had gotten so lucky. You're a really good man, Nathan, Charlotte said, breaking the silence. Emily is lucky to have you. Nathan smiled politely, his tone warm but distant. Thank you. Emily is an amazing woman. I'm the lucky one. Charlotte tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. You know, Nathan, she began, her voice taking on a more thoughtful tone. Emily wasn't always the woman she is now. Back in school, she had her wild moments. Nathan's grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. I know everything about Emily's past, he said, his voice steady. She's been honest with me, and I respect her for it. Charlotte raised her eyebrows, surprised by his response. Well, that's admirable, she said, her voice soft. You two make such a perfect couple. But deep inside, a storm was brewing. Charlotte's envy was starting to take shape into something darker, a desire not just for what Emily had, but to take it all away. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she wasn't going to stop until she got it. This was just the beginning. The ride to Charlotte's home was filled with an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional murmurs of casual conversation. Nathan's tired eyes remained focused on the road, but Charlotte's gaze was fixed on him. She couldn't help herself. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew her in despite her best efforts to remain composed. His tall frame, the subtle yet confident air about him, and the way he carried himself with a quiet assurance, it all seemed too perfect. And, as they drove through the quiet streets, Charlotte couldn't help but wonder how Emily had gotten so lucky. When they finally reached Charlotte's house, she lingered a moment, pretending to hesitate. Would you like to come in for some coffee? She asked sweetly, her eyes twinkling with the kind of playful innocence she had perfected over the years. You must be tired after the drive. It won't take long. Nathan hesitated, exhaustion evident on his face. I should really head back to Emily. She's probably waiting for me. Charlotte pouted slightly, trying to soften his resolve. It's just 1 cup of coffee. Nathan, you can't be that tired. Besides, you're already here. It'll only take a minute. And you know how good my coffee is. He looked at her for a long moment, weighing his options. As much as he loved the comfort of his own home and the thought of his wife waiting for him, the idea of sitting down, even for a moment, seemed appealing. He hadn't realized just how much the stress of his day was weighing on him. All right, he said with a soft sigh. 1 cup, then I'm leaving. Charlotte's face lit up with a smile as she led him inside. Her home was dimly lit, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere. She moved gracefully through the living room, preparing the coffee with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. As she brewed the rich, aromatic coffee, she watched Nathan closely, noting how his eyes softened as he breathed in the comforting smell. Here you go, she said, handing him a steaming cup. I make the best coffee in town, she said with a wink, settling beside him on the couch. Nathan took a sip and immediately relaxed, a smile creeping across his face. This is really good, he admitted, his tone warm. You've got a gift, Charlotte. She watched him closely, noticing how his guard seemed to be lowering with every passing second. Charlotte leaned in slightly, her voice soft but filled with intent. Nathan, do you ever feel like you're too good for just one person? You know, like maybe you deserve to be adored by more than just Emily? Nathan frowned slightly, unsure of where this conversation was heading. What do you mean? He asked, glancing at her with confusion. Charlotte's eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint. I mean, look at you. You're everything a woman could want. Strong, handsome, successful. Don't you ever wonder if there's more out there for you? If maybe Emily isn't the only one who can give you what you truly deserve. Nathan felt an unsettling shift in the air. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Emily is everything I need, he replied, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of uncertainty. She's my world. Charlotte tilted her head, feigning sympathy. I know, Nathan, she said softly, her voice laced with honeyed persuasion. But sometimes good men need to be reminded of their worth. And you're so much more than what Emily can offer. She moved a little closer, her fingers brushing his arm lightly. The warmth of her touch sent a small shiver down his spine. Despite himself, he found his gaze lingering on her. She was close now, so close that he could smell her perfume. A sweet, heady scent that filled his senses. Before he could think, Charlotte leaned in and kissed him. Nathan froze. His mind screamed at him to stop, to pull away, to remember the vows he had made to Emily. But the combination of her touch, her words, and the warmth of the coffee clouded his judgment. Before he knew it, the kiss deepened, and one moment turned into another. Nathan's body betrayed him, and in that fleeting, momentary lapse of control, he found himself in Charlotte's arms. The guilt hit him almost immediately. But it was too late. The damage had been done. When he finally pulled away, his chest was tight with panic. His mind raced, but his body felt numb. I shouldn't have done that, he whispered, his voice trembling with guilt. But Charlotte, ever the manipulator, merely smiled softly. It's all right, Nathan, she purred, her fingers tracing his jawline in a way that made him feel dizzy. You deserve this. You've been so good to Emily. But you deserve more. You're mine now, and I'm going to make sure you never forget it. He didn't know what to say. And in that moment, the weight of his betrayal settled heavily on his heart. As Charlotte moved closer, her plans began to unfold. She had gotten what she wanted for now. But this was only the beginning. Her grip on Nathan was tight, and she wasn't going to let go anytime soon. Nathan sat there, heart pounding in his chest, overwhelmed by a sense of guilt and confusion. The woman he loved, the woman he had promised to cherish, was waiting for him at home. And yet here he was, caught in the web of Charlotte's manipulations. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a far darker game. The guilt weighed heavily on Nathan as he drove back home that night. The streets blurred beneath the headlights. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his thoughts racing uncontrollably. What had he done? How had he let it happen? Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Charlotte's face, her sly smile, the way she kissed him, flooded his mind. He wanted to erase it, to forget the warmth of her touch. But the more he tried, the more it clung to him, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. When he finally pulled into the driveway, his heart was pounding. He tried to steady his breath, but it felt like the air was thick with the weight of his actions. He stepped out of the car, trying to shake off the tightness in his chest. He could hear Emily's laughter from inside, the sound of her joy cutting through the darkness like a knife. His wife was waiting for him, blissfully unaware of the storm that had just begun to churn in his life. Emily rushed to meet him as soon as he opened the door. Her face lit up with warmth and affection. She wrapped her arms around him tightly, holding him in an embrace that was so full of love. It almost made him want to break down right then and there. "You're back," she said, her voice full of genuine happiness. "What kept you so long? Was traffic really that bad?" Nathan swallowed hard, trying to force a smile. But the words felt foreign in his mouth. "Yeah, just traffic. Sorry I took so long." He avoided her eyes, desperate to mask the turmoil inside. Emily smiled brightly. "You must be so tired. Come on, let me make you something to eat. You need to relax." She took his hand, leading him into the kitchen. But Nathan couldn't shake the heaviness in his chest. The lie felt suffocating. As he sat at the table, his thoughts continued to race. How could he look her in the eyes, knowing what he had done? The woman who loved him, who had stood by him for so long, he had betrayed her. And worse, he was stuck. He couldn't undo what had happened. And the weight of his secret was unbearable. Every time Emily spoke, every time she smiled at him, the guilt grew stronger. It gnawed at him, until it felt like his heart was suffocating under the pressure. But even as the guilt clawed at his insides, another thought began to creep in. Charlotte. He could feel her presence. Her manipulation, hanging over him like a dark cloud. What if she tried to use this against him? What if she demanded more? Pushed him even further into her web? The phone buzzed on the table, interrupting his spiraling thoughts. His heart skipped a beat when he saw an unknown number flashing on the screen. Hesitantly, he answered. "Hello?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Nathan," came a cold, calm voice on the other end. It was Charlotte. "I have something for you." Nathan's heart raced, panic creeping up his spine. "What do you want, Charlotte?" There was a pause, then a laugh, a low, menacing sound. "I just thought you'd like to see a little memory. It's a video, Nathan, a very special one, and it's all yours. But here's the thing, if you don't want it to get out, you'll do exactly as I say." His stomach twisted in horror. He could barely breathe. "No. What video?" he demanded, though deep down he knew exactly what she meant. "Oh, come on, Nathan," Charlotte said with a mock sweetness. "You don't remember? The night we shared together. The one you were so eager to forget? Well, I've got it all on tape. And if you don't want Emily to see it, you'll come over to my place tonight. You'll keep me company. You'll do whatever I want. Otherwise," she let the threat hang in the air, her voice sharp and clear, "I'll send it straight to Emily. Imagine how she'll feel watching you betray her like that." Nathan's world seemed to crash around him. He felt paralyzed, his thoughts racing but unable to process. "You can't do this, Charlotte. You'll destroy everything. My marriage, my life. Everything I've worked for." "Oh, I can do whatever I want," Charlotte purred, her tone dripping with power. "And don't even think about going to the police. Who would believe you? It's your word against mine. You'll be the one who looks guilty." Nathan's hands began to shake, his breath shallow. He wanted to scream, to confront Charlotte, but he couldn't, not with the threat of losing everything hanging over his head. "All right," he whispered, his voice strained. "I'll come. Just, please, don't send it to her. Don't ruin my life." Charlotte's laughter echoed in his ear, cold and triumphant. "Good. I'll be waiting for you, Nathan." The call ended, and Nathan stood there for a moment, staring at the phone in disbelief. He felt trapped. He was so deep in this lie now that there was no way out. Emily deserved the truth, but the thought of telling her, of watching the pain in her eyes, was too much. He closed his eyes for a moment, his mind a whirlwind of guilt and fear. He had never felt more alone. As he looked back at the life he had built with Emily, he knew he was about to destroy it all, and there was no way to take it back. Nathan stood in front of Charlotte's house later that evening, his heart pounding in his chest. His fingers trembled as he rang the doorbell, the sound echoing in the quiet night. He felt as though he was stepping into a nightmare, unable to wake up from the sinking dread that consumed him. He had promised Charlotte that he would come, but with every step he took, the weight of his betrayal grew heavier. The truth was, he didn't know if he could go through with it anymore. But what choice did he have? Charlotte had a hold on him, and he feared what would happen if he tried to break free. The door opened slowly, and Charlotte's familiar, cold smile greeted him. She stepped aside to let him in, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "I knew you'd come, Nathan," she said sweetly, though her words held a sharp edge. "Come in, make yourself comfortable." Nathan forced a smile as he stepped inside. But the room felt suffocating. The dim lighting, the faint smell of incense, it all felt wrong. Like he was walking deeper into a trap he could not escape. Charlotte motioned for him to sit on the couch, and she followed suit, her body language relaxed and confident, like she had already won. "I've been waiting for you," Charlotte purred, her voice dripping with entitlement. "You know, Nathan, I never thought you'd be the type to disappoint me." I thought you were smarter than that. He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. His mind was racing with thoughts of Emily, of the life he had built with her. But every time he tried to think of her, the image of Charlotte's eyes, full of manipulation and triumph, haunted him. What do you want from me, Charlotte? Nathan asked, his voice strained. I've already come. I've done what you wanted. Please, just leave me alone. Charlotte leaned in, her smile widening. Oh, Nathan, I'm not done with you yet, she said, her tone dark and possessive. You don't get to walk away that easily. You're mine now, remember? You promised. The words stung like a slap in the face. But Nathan didn't have the strength to fight back. He had already gone too far. Charlotte's grip on him was too tight. And he was too deep into this mess to escape. He couldn't even bring himself to tell Emily the truth. The fear of losing her was unbearable. Charlotte leaned in closer, her lips almost touching his ear. You know, Nathan, she whispered, sometimes men like you need to be reminded of their worth. Emily can't give you what I can. She never could. Nathan's body tensed, but he couldn't move. The guilt, the fear, the confusion, they were all tangled up inside him. Every word Charlotte spoke seemed to bind him tighter, like invisible chains wrapping around his heart. You don't understand, Nathan said, his voice barely audible. Emily is my world. She's the one I love. I don't want this. I never wanted this. Charlotte's smile faltered for a moment. But she quickly recovered. Oh, Nathan, she said softly, her fingers grazing his arm. You're just confused. You've been with Emily for so long. You don't even know what you're missing. But I'll show you. I'll show you what you've been missing. Before Nathan could respond, Charlotte kissed him again. This time, there was no hesitation on her part. No confusion. She knew exactly what she was doing. And Nathan's resolve faltered completely. The kiss deepened, and his mind swirled with guilt and desire. For a moment, he felt completely lost. The guilt from his betrayal with Emily, the weight of the secret, seemed to fade into the background. All that mattered was the heat of Charlotte's kiss. The way her hands roamed over his body, her touch both tender and demanding. He wanted to pull away. He wanted to stop it. To go home, to confess everything to Emily and beg for her forgiveness. But with every passing second, Charlotte's hold on him tightened. She had him now, and she wasn't letting go. As the night wore on, Nathan's mind grew clouded. The longer he stayed in Charlotte's world, the further he slipped from the reality he once knew. His love for Emily, his commitment to her, it all felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Like sand in the wind. When Nathan finally left Charlotte's house, the weight of his actions was unbearable. His heart was heavy, guilt pooling inside him like a thick fog. He could already imagine the pain Emily would feel if she ever found out. He didn't know how to undo what he had done. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. As he drove home, the faces of the two women, the one he loved and the one who had manipulated him, flashed before his eyes. He didn't know what he would do when he walked through that door. But he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same again. As Nathan walked into his home that night, the weight of his guilt was unbearable. Emily was sitting on the couch, waiting for him, her eyes filled with warmth and love, completely unaware of the storm that had been brewing behind her back. Nathan stood there for a moment, his chest tight, his heart torn between the life he had destroyed and the love he still had for her. But the truth was no longer something he could hide. It was as though a piece of him had died. Knowing what he had done, he opened his mouth to speak, to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't come. Emily smiled up at him, oblivious to the turmoil inside. The moment felt like a cruel joke, a beautiful lie he had been living for far too long. As he stood there, he realized there was no going back. The man he once was, the man she loved, was gone, consumed by his own mistakes. I love you, Emily, he whispered softly, but the words felt empty, hollow. But it was too late. The trust was shattered, and no apology could undo the hurt that was on the horizon. Emily would find out soon enough. And when she did, their lives would be irrevocably changed. In the end, Nathan would lose everything he had ever taken for granted. and Emily would be left to pick up the pieces of her broken heart. Sometimes, life doesn't give us second chances. Sometimes, we pay a price far steeper than we can imagine. For more life stories and lessons learned, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring tale.